envelope later.
Is it one of?
It should say review on it.
You want feedback?
Yeah, that one right there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. We're gonna get started here. I'm just waiting for a couple more people to show up. And Luke, you haven't been to these before, but I live stream these on YouTube, so that way, like if there's something you may have missed, you can go back onto my channel and you can pick it back up and see and check that out. You'll do what?
I'll fix up my
Okay. We're gonna move quickly though, so. So what time did you end up leaving last night, Luke or Philip?
Oh man, 1:14. Yeah, I didn't realize it until I left. I was like, oh my gosh.
I got home and the only thing I took in was my my duffel bag. Everything else just stayed in the car.
Yeah.
I got in and I'm like, I'm so tired. I went to bed, I crashed. Like I was texting with a friend and like the last message I sent was like at 11:05.
Yeah.
Oh no, because I got home at about 11:20. So no, it was like, I don't know. It was before midnight.
Yeah.
And like I got up this morning at like 5:30 and I looked at my phone, I'm like, I did not get that text message. So, oh man. Yeah, it was last night was such a bust. It was such a bust.
Did you hear that one guy?
Huh?
There was one guy who just had a little too much and he was bugging Zach the whole time, man.
I saw that.
Yeah, poor guy. I had to be a decoy and let Zach get away at the end of the night.
Yeah, I know that that guy just wouldn't stop talking to him.
No, he wasn't mean, but he wasn't like
He was just
very nice.
Yeah. Well, there's one guy walking around. He had like a pineapple style Hawaiian shirt on.
Really?
Yeah, it was like it wasn't really a Hawaiian shirt. It was more like a cabana shirt, but it had all these like pineapples printed on it. And walking around, he came walking up to me. He's like, "You write books?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You wrote these books?" "No, I wrote the books that are over on that table with the art." And he's like, "Oh." He's like, "What are they doing here?" I'm like, it's an art thing, you know. And he's like, "Well, how old are you?" 43. Why does that matter? Well, do you know the owner? No, I don't. This is my first time here. Okay, so
you were an NPC for him.
I swear.
He was the main character that night.
I don't know which one of us was the NPC, but I'm pretty sure his code was busted. So, all right, Philip, if you wouldn't mind hitting the light for me. All right. Welcome. I'm really excited to be sharing this one with you. Just to give you guys a heads up, the library's got something coming up later this summer where they're going to be kind of closing doors and moving stuff to a new facility. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I know that they're doing something temporary as they're doing renovations here on this building. So I have 2 more classes coming up, one in June, one in July. The one in June, we're going to be talking about how to write sci-fi, different forms of sci-fi, and then the one in July escapes me, and because I just sent the information to Sherman down at the front desk, and I'm completely spazzing right now on what that topic is going to be, but I'll let you guys know next month. So as we're jumping in, we're talking about writing mysteries, we're talking about detective noir. Who are some famous detectives that you guys are aware of? James. Sherlock Holmes. I'm so glad you said that. Sherlock Holmes. Not to be confused with Holmes.com. Anybody else? Yeah.
It's an old show from the 80s with the work of the murder she wrote.
Yeah, and Jessica Fletcher is her name, the character name. Jessica Fletcher. Although she wasn't really a detective, she was a detective of sorts. She was kind of an amateur detective because she wrote murder mystery stories, and so she knew how things worked. But like, I wouldn't want to live where she lived because everybody died. Like every week someone died and she was the center of everything. So that kind of worries me. Who else? Who else is another famous fictional detective?
Sergeant Friday? Or from Dragnet?
Yeah, from Dragnet. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought about that. Sergeant Joe Friday. Man.
And the Noir side.
Yeah. Anybody else? Luke.
Detective Conan.
Who?
Detective Conan.
Detective Conan, what's that?
It's a very popular manga/anime about a young detective solves crimes.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it. Okay. A couple more that you might think of. We have Poirot, Hercule Poirot from the Agatha Christie murder mysteries, like Murder on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express, two of my favorite murder mysteries. Another one that most people tend to ignore just because of how bombastic the character is, but Batman. Both Batman and Sherlock Holmes share the same moniker, that they are both regarded as the world's greatest detective. In fact, Batman got his start in the 1940s with Detective Comics #1, and to this day, that is what the DC in DC Comics stands for. That's how they got their start. Because they actually took over Action Comics, which owned the rights to Superman, and that just creates a whole other mess of things. So for those of you who are joining us online, hey, great to see you guys. So we're talking murder mysteries, or whether it's a murder mystery or some kind of other, like a theft mystery or a kidnapping. We're learning how to write those. And the reason why I asked the question about detectives is because detectives are crucial to your plot. And James, I thought you'd get a kick out of this, but I happened to snag this guy. This is a walking stick that I picked up in London at the Sherlock Holmes Museum located at 221B Baker Street. That is actually Sherlock Holmes' address. It is a 4 or 5 floor walk-up in Kensington, London. And it has a merch shop and a bunch of waxworks made by Madame Tussauds to stage certain scenes from the books. And for me, being a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes, that was a real treat to go and see. But let's move forward. So our agenda for today, we're going to be talking about the mystery's history, the enigma of popularity, why it's so popular, the anatomy of a mystery, the 6 core conundrums, and the 9 mysterious writing tips that you guys are going to be working through. Plus, we have a writing prompt in our conclusion. So, everybody here knows a little bit about me, but I'm an author, I'm a podcast host, I do stuff, I know things. We'll just leave it at that. I've said this enough times so that you guys are all pretty familiar. All right, so, mysteries history. The genre got its start in the mid-19th century. In fact, the Murders at the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe in 1841 is considered by most to be the first modern detective story. In fact, Poe actually set the stage and kind of the standard for murder mysteries, for detective noir, and to some extent, some levels of horror. In fact, his work and the psychology behind his characters, the way he wrote his stories and his plot lines were influential for a lot of other writers later on in the 20th and 21st centuries, such as H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King. In fact, H.P. Lovecraft, I've been listening to a collection of his work, and one of the common threads as they're introducing various stories is that he tried to kind of model himself as an early 20th century version of Edgar Allan Poe. There's a lot of word choices that Poe used that influenced Lovecraft. Now, part of the reason why murder mysteries and mysteries in general started cropping up and becoming a more common genre is because urbanization of towns and cities, lack of a proper police force, people were not very trustworthy of their police force, or there was more crime going on than the police could handle. If you've ever seen the movie Sleepy Hollow, we're talking about cases taking place at the end of the 19th century where modern policing hadn't really taken hold, even in an urban center like New York. And so a lot of things were left up to chance. There's kind of this individualistic thinking that led to the respect for human reasoning, a lot of deduction and a lot of logic. We see this in stories like Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie's work. The Industrial Revolution generated a need for a paid police force because as technology was becoming more modern, as it was becoming more industrialized, crimes became more modern. They became more industrialized. People had more access to mechanisms that they didn't have before. Many crimes prior, it should be wood, not wook, sorry, fat fingers, but many crimes prior would be solved quickly or not at all. So there's a scene at the opening of Sleepy Hollow where a couple of police constables are fishing a body out of the Hudson River or the East River, I'm not sure which, and their immediate speculation is, oh, the guy drowned. It's a drowning. That's it, case closed. And Ichabod Crane, played by Johnny Depp, comes walking and says, oh, hold up, no, we need to do an autopsy. We need to cut him open and find out how he actually died, because he could have been poisoned, he could have been shot, he could have been stabbed, any number of other things could have happened, and disposing of the body in the river where there's fish and other things going into it can destroy the evidence. And they're like, you're crazy. Turns out he's actually right. So a lot of crimes would go unsolved, and that just doesn't work. So the genre began to grow its readership with the introduction of dime novels and pulp magazines. Does anybody know what a dime novel is or a pulp magazine is? Luke?
A pulp magazine?
You're defining it with the... Okay, so when a dime novel, they were little novellas, probably no thicker than a cell phone. All right? And you can pick them up for a dime. Literally. That's why they were called that. You could pick them up at a dime store. They were by today's standards, they were incredibly inexpensive. I mean, that's like getting something for free, basically. Back then, in the late 1800s, early 1920s, a dime was quite a bit of money. You could buy a loaf of bread for a dime. You could buy a gallon of milk for a dime, or a bag of milk, depending on where you live. My point is, people could get them really easily, really inexpensively. Pulp magazines could also be picked up very cheap, but rather than having one set story by one particular author, pulp magazines often featured multiple short stories written by a variety of different authors, some of whom would regularly submit stories to these magazines, and they were published all over the place. Then you also have new adaptations that developed with new media forms, such as radio, such as television, such as film. And so as these new media forms developed, you get more ways to get mysteries. Now, the enigma of popularity, we're asking the question of why were mystery novels so popular? Individual novels were not as easily accessible due to the cost of publishing and getting books around the world. So there is a huge, huge demand, but not enough of a supply chain for it. And so anytime something new was published, if it became available, people would snatch it up. All right? That's where the pulp magazines really came into play, because you could get a snippet of a variety of different authors, and you could then pick your favorite. And if they had an actual book come out, then maybe you could get the book if you could find a copy. All right? Another factor The genre's popularity really grew in the early 1920s because of dime novels. They're cheap, they're easy to publish, they're short reads. You could probably read them in just a couple of hours. People were just devouring them. Pulp magazine shared the monthly collections of mystery short stories. People loved them, as I've said already. Alfred Hitchcock, the notable film director, he created the movies Psycho, The Birds, North by Northwest, Vertigo, Rear Window. This guy was the master of suspense and thriller and horror for a time. He actually started as a pulp magazine publisher before moving to film and television in the 1950s. So he was one of those creative guys who knew the genre very well, and he was able to move from one media form to another with the changing of times, and he was very good at what he did. Not a great person, but he was very good at what he did. All right? So here's the anatomy of a mystery, and this is something you guys really need to pay attention to. Okay? Unlike a lot of other story genres, murder mysteries actually fall into what's called a 4-act structure. Most use a 3-act structure or even a 5-act structure. Murder mysteries are different. They have 4 acts. The first act, and we'll go over these more in detail, is the setup, and you have the crime and the mystery. You have the investigation, and then you have the revelation. All right? I'll leave this up for just a moment. All right, so Act 1, the setup. This act, it introduces the main character. Usually it's a sleuth of some kind. They could be an actual licensed detective. They could be some kind of consultant for a police department. They could be at like Aurora Tea Garden on Hallmark. She could be a librarian working with the police to solve murder mysteries because she's a big fan of murder mysteries. Or in the case of Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote, she somehow just happens to be there right when the murder happens, but she's not the culprit, ever. Go figure. What this does is the setup sets the stage for the mystery. The reader is introduced to the character's world and the relevant background information. So I want you guys to think about Murder on the Orient Express, and I'm making references to the film version from 2017. When we are first introduced in the setup, we are introduced to Hercule Poirot, who is a Belgian inspector. He is considered like Sherlock Holmes, the world's greatest detective. Don't know why that keeps getting thrown around with a bunch of literary detectives, but he is one of the world's greatest detectives. He's sought out for cases worldwide. And he receives a telegram requesting that he finish his case in Jerusalem and travel back to London. And in order to get to London, he needs to first go through Istanbul, and he needs to catch the Orient Express, which would take him all the way from Turkey to through the majority of Europe all the way to the coast, so he could catch his ship to England. As he is being introduced to the train, okay, what's really cool about this, and you see this more in the cinematography than in anything else, he is walked from the back of the train up towards the front of the train, where his room is going to be. And what's interesting is, as he is walking through the train cars, he is introduced to every single passenger on the train in some way, shape, or form. Some people just greet him as they're passing through the corridor. Others are trying to actually strike up a conversation because some people recognize him because he is that famous. But he is introduced to everyone possible for the rest of the story. Then we've got the crime or the mystery. This is where the crime is committed or mystery arises, which sparks the investigation. The reader is given a sense of the victim's world. Okay? In Murder on the Orient Express, there's a character named Mr. Ratchets. In the film, he's played by Johnny Depp. And he believes that he is being stalked, that he is being hunted, that someone wants to kill him. He can't for the life of him imagine why anyone would want to do that, even though the presentation of the character that we get is that he's a little skeezy, he's not to be trusted, there's something just kind of disingenuous about him. Okay? He has no idea. He shows threatening letters that he has received in the mail to Mr. Poirot, and he says, I need you to protect me. And Poirot says he would look into it, and he leaves it at that. That same night, as they're just a couple nights, they're on the first leg of the trip, and Ratchet is killed in his sleep. It's a locked room mystery because his door was locked. No one else had access except for the porter. Okay? He is killed, the train is stopped by an avalanche, and they're stuck in the snow. And now Poirot has to investigate. He has to figure out what is going on and what the motive is. Okay? Act 3, this is the investigation. So Acts 1 and 2 usually happen pretty quick. They don't have to be very long. Okay? The investigation is where the bulk of the story is going to be focused. This is where the sleuth begins investigating and uncovering clues and interviewing suspects and facing hindering obstacles. So in Murder on the Orient Express, Poirot actually goes through and he talks with everybody on the train. He talks with the conductors. He talks with the porters. He talks with every passenger. He talks with the chefs in the kitchen car. He talks with the bartender in the bar car. He talks with everybody. The only person on board that he absolutely trusts, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is his best friend, Book. Book is the owner of the train. He made special arrangements for Poirot to be on this train, and he is riding the train with his friend. Okay? The only person he trusts is Book. And Book is helping with the investigation. They talk with everybody. And none of the stories really make a whole lot of sense. Things don't sync up. Clues feel, excuse me, clues feel like they're going nowhere. There are a variety of different things that go sideways for them. One of the biggest obstacles is the fact that they're stuck there in the snow. It's cold. They've got the furnaces going, they've got heat, they've got electricity to some extent on board the train, but they're running short on supplies. And the crew is working to dig them out of the snow so that they can continue on their way. But the other obstacle is that if they continue on their way without him catching the culprit goes free. The murderer, whoever it is, goes free. That brings us to Act 4, the revelation. This is where the mystery is resolved, with the culprit revealed and the case closed. This act eliminates other suspects during the final confrontation. Now here's the fun thing about Murder on the Orient Express, and spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie or you haven't read the books, sorry, not sorry, but the book's been around for over 100 years, or close to it. There's not just one culprit. There's 12. Every single one of the other passengers on the train participated in killing Ratchet. And the reason why is because Ratchet's real name is Cassetti. Cassetti was a mobster who kidnapped and killed a famous war hero's daughter. And every single one of these people on board the train was related to that family. Either they were the family's driver, the family's nursemaid, the family's cook, the family's butler, or they were a relative or a close friend of the family, and they watched their friends fall apart after this calamity. They all worked together to kill Cassetti. And this places Poirot at an impasse. He doesn't know what to do. Because for him, it's all about seeking justice. It's about balancing the scales. A life has been taken, a life needs to be paid up for it. But he understands that Cassetti actually committed the worst crime by kidnapping and killing that little girl. And so, in the confrontation, he lets them all go. He holds on to the fact that all these people were guilty, but what they really did was they actually balanced the scales of justice, because that little girl's life had already been taken and Cassetti's life needed to pay for it. So he was okay with it. Not totally, but he was okay. So these are the 4 acts that you need to be working on. So the longest act is going to be the investigation. The first 2 acts set everything up, get the ball rolling, and then the revelation should be quick, clean, and satisfying. Okay? Now, I like to insert quotes. This is from thriller writer Patricia Cornwell. She says, "I constantly remind people that crime isn't solved by technology, it's solved by people." All right? So your characters, while they might use technology to help them solve the case, whatever that technology is, depending on the time period, focus on what they learn about the people. Focus on what clues they are following. Focus on what they are actually doing, because it's your characters that make the decisions. Okay? So, let's talk about the 6 core conundrums. The first one is the crime or mystery. The story must have a problem to solve. If there's no problem, there's no story. And this could be a murder, this could be a missing person, this could be some other puzzle or event. Maybe, just maybe, it's a theft, and you're looking for something that has been stolen. Okay? Those are fun little MacGuffins to go after. So you need to have a crime or a mystery of some kind. And it doesn't have to be just one either. You can have, maybe it's a theft that leads to a larger crime, like someone getting killed. All right? The next one, you need to have a sleuth or an investigator. This is someone who needs to be actively trying to solve the murder mystery. I keep saying murder mystery. Solving the mystery. Often a detective or an amateur sleuth. Okay, it's great to have a professional detective like Poirot or Holmes, or like someone who works on a police force who's actively trying to investigate this. One of the reasons why Amazon has been so successful in the last couple of years with the Reacher series is because A, the Jack Reacher books are really good, and B, they're essentially mystery stories. Regardless of the action, regardless of how big Jack Reacher is as a character, and he's a big guy, the character's background is that he was a military investigator. He actually led a special investigations unit for the Army before he retired out as a major. So, even though he has retired out, he's no longer in that line of work, he still keeps finding himself getting drawn into these murder mysteries. Or bigger crimes involved. The 3rd season actually deals with a weapons smuggling racket in New England. And great series. But you can have an amateur sleuth as well, like I mentioned, Aurora Teagarden or Jessica Fletcher, or if you want to come up with someone original, be my guest. All right? Like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. They were not professional detectives, but they became super popular as characters because, one, they resonated with kids, with preteens and teenagers, because they were kids who were trying to help out their small towns. And they were surprisingly smart and got in the way. Another great example of amateur sleuthing, Scooby-Doo. The Scooby-Doo Detective Agency, or Mystery Inc., whatever you want to call them, they were amateur sleuths. Most of the time they were looking for the paranormal, but usually it turned out to be a crime involving real people and nothing supernatural at all. In fact, this is a fun fact, if you ever watch Scooby-Doo, especially classic episodes, and I don't know how the new episodes play in now, but if you watch classic episodes of Scooby-Doo, The first person that they usually interview is the person who's actually committing the crimes as the monster or ghost or whatever it is that they're supposed to be. So just pay attention to that because it's a really fun thing. All right. The third core thing that you need to have is you need to have a villain or a suspect. There must be a suspect or a villain, and their identity should be unknown until the resolution. Now, sometimes putting the villain up front can prevent staleness. Sometimes seeing the villain or the culprit do the thing right at the very beginning can set the tone. It can set the stage. Because then it's like, okay, well, that it provides a question for the reader of how is the sleuth, how's the detective, how is our hero going to figure out this guy is the bad guy? Because most of the time, your villains aren't going to be these mustache-twirling, larger-than-life villains. More than likely, they're going to be someone who's operating in the shadows, who doesn't want their criminal activities to be noticed. All right? The only reason why a criminal activity gets noticed is because it surpasses a certain level of stealthiness. All right? The more obvious it is, the easier it's going to be to solve the crime. The less obvious it is, the harder it's going to be. All right? Sometimes putting the villain up front can get rid of that staleness. Fourth, you need a trail of clues. You need breadcrumbs. All right? The story needs clues that the sleuth and the reader can use to deduce the truth. And those can be really fun to piece together because as you're paying attention to the clues, sometimes the clues are dropped before the mystery even starts. So I was listening to an audiobook about a month or so ago. It's part of a series of this archaeologist who gets caught up in some criminal events. He's not the criminal. He's just helping a police officer or a detective investigate criminal activities. And one of the second book in the series takes him to Pakistan, to one of the oldest human settlements in the old world. And but early on, as he is wrapping up his classes in England, he's a professor in England at Oxford, and as he's wrapping up classes, one of his students talks about how she's going to be doing an internship. And then later on in the story, she pops up at the very site that he goes to, and she's involved with what the organization is doing criminally. And she's a true believer in that organization. And when he first sees her there, he's like, wait a minute, why is she? Oh, this is the internship. So sometimes the clues are dropped in advance before the mystery ever gets going. But don't be afraid to mix up the obviousness of your clues or use, it's kind of hard to see, red herrings. Okay? And the reason being is because sometimes you want the clues to go in a linear path. Sometimes you want them to kind of stray. Sometimes you want the clues to be not clues at all. That's what the red herring is for. The red herring helps you throw the detective off the case, because that right there is going to be a hindrance for them. That right there is going to send them off in the wrong direction, even for just a short amount of time. All right? Whatever it is, whether it's a counterfeiting, money counterfeiting scheme, or a murder, or a theft, or a kidnapping, or whatever it is, you want to throw in real clues and fake clues in equal measure. Any questions so far? All right. So, number 5, you need suspense. The story needs to keep the reader both guessing and invested with a buildup of tension. Okay? If, for example, I say that there is a bomb in the room and it's going to explode in front of all the people in the room, that's not very suspenseful because you know it's going to happen. And this is taken from a thought exercise that Alfred Hitchcock actually put out in one of his films. He actually starts by saying, if you put the bomb in, say, a piano, you see a person walk in, they place the bomb right there in the piano or in a cupboard of some kind. They keep it out of sight. You know that there's a ticking clock. What ratchets up the tension is when you have characters walking in and out of the room who have no idea that the bomb exists. The audience does. The person who put it there does. The narrator does. But the rest of the characters don't. And it ratchets up the tension and the suspense, because what if they go over to that piano and they start plunking on the keys, or they start to open that cabinet and there's a trigger on that cabinet door that would blow up the bomb? Or if it's on a timer, how much time do they have before the thing goes off? Those are the things that keep us in suspense because we want to get hooked on that story. And that's what that's going to do. So find a way to ratchet up that suspense. Find a way to ratchet up the tension, because what that's going to do is it's going to draw your reader in. It's going to keep them guessing, and it's going to keep them invested. All right? Don't give things away too easily. And the sixth core conundrum: you need to have a satisfying resolution. The mystery needs to be solved. If it is left unsolved, that is not satisfying for your reader. It's not going to be satisfying for you. Okay? And the solution should make sense based on the clues and the events of the story. Okay? If you have a murder mystery and you have all these clues pointing to one particular person, but they are not it, and the detective figures out who the real culprit is without any clues going in that direction, that is not going to be satisfying, because it's going to feel really, really phoned in. Okay? One of my favorite mysteries, and this is again a film reference, is The Tourist, again starring Johnny Depp. And in that particular story, Interpol is looking for a guy who stole millions of dollars from a crime boss in London, used some of the money to have his entire face restructured, and rolls into Venice on the train. And he meets a beautiful woman, a femme fatale, played by Angelina Jolie. Turns out she actually works for Interpol as well. But he's been using her. She's been a double agent. She thinks that he has been using her as his employer, his assistant. Come to find out, she's been trying to work him to get access and to arrest him. The problem is, nobody knows what he looks like anymore. Nobody has any clue. And so Interpol keeps thinking that Johnny Depp is this guy, and yet he's not. Or at least that's what they think. And every time he's in a particular situation, they're expecting him to do the thing that they think he's capable of doing, and then he does the complete opposite. But there is enough clues that show you, yeah, maybe this guy really is that guy. But there's a red herring in that. There's another actor, his name is Rufus Sewell, who shows up at the same locations, on the same train, at the same restaurants, everywhere that Johnny Depp is. And he's got the same height, he's got the same build, his hair's a little bit different, but he's a really good-looking guy. And so Interpol's not really sure. And eventually, at the very end, when they still have no idea how to catch this guy, but at the very end, they see someone on a phone down by the water in Venice, and they're like, oh, that's got to be him. He's the one who's calling us right now. They go down there, come to find out he's just a tourist. And it's been Johnny Depp the entire time. So, make sure that your ending makes sense. All right. We're going to talk about 9 tips for writing mysteries. All right. And this is going to be one that I will always roll back on. First of all, you need to read other mysteries often. Okay? Reading is, like I said, breathing in. You read the story and you pay attention to the structure and the elements, where clues are shared and how they tie together. All right? If you are not reading a mystery story, you have no idea how the structure is going to play out. You are not familiar enough with the genre to write the story. You need to be reading that. Because otherwise, if you're not breathing that content in, you're not able to breathe that content back out. All right, just the same. Now, for me, when I'm writing in a particular genre, I tend to avoid reading that genre for a little bit, only because I've had enough of the breathing in, and now I want to take what I've been reading and breathe it back out. Were you going to raise your hand, James? All right, so make sure that you are reading mysteries as often as possible. And let me just back up here. You don't necessarily have to read mysteries. You can also watch mysteries. Okay, whether it's on TV, whether it's on a movie, regardless, pay attention to the clues that are dropped. Growing up and when I was in high school and college, I watched a lot of CSI New York and a lot of CSI Miami and the original CSI from Las Vegas. New York was my favorite just because I liked the characters a little bit better and Gary Sinise was just cool. But the clues were fun to follow, and I was always trying to test myself to see if I could spot the bad guy before the cops did. Never figured it out except for like with one episode. But it's always fun to test yourself before you get to that resolution. All right, so tip number 2. You need to know every detail of the crime. Doesn't matter if it's a murder mystery or a bloodless crime like a theft, or kidnapping is not really a bloodless crime, but it's not, bloody, especially if nobody gets hurt. Whatever that misdeed is, at the heart of your mystery, it's going to have to drive the narrative. So you need to know who done it, what they did, when it occurred, where it happened, why it happened, and how. So I'm gonna write this out on the board here. Okay. When it comes to knowing everything about your crime, before you ever put pen to paper, you need the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay? Because these details matter. These details are going to populate your clues. Okay? If you know who it is, what they look like, how they sound, how they walk, how they move, everything about that particular character, maybe write in another character who could be a red herring. Someone who looks like them, who sounds like them, has the same build, maybe shows up to the same places, just like I mentioned with the tourist. Okay? If you know what they've done, that can inform how the rest of the mystery plays out. Think about Murder on the Orient Express. Ratchet, or Cassetti, was killed, but the reason why he was killed, what he had done, was far, far worse. Because he kidnapped a little girl and killed her. When did it happen? This is one of the things that police look for. Motive means an opportunity. This is your opportunity. Okay? When did it happen? When did it take place? Was it at nighttime? Was it at daytime? How is time affected by the environment? In Murder on the Orient Express, Cassetti has a pocket watch that is set on his nightstand in his little room. And the watch breaks and the window is cold and the environment kind of displaces and distorts the time of death. So they're not entirely sure when he died. It could have been at midnight, it could have been at 5 in the morning. Nobody knows. Where does the crime happen? Does it happen in a bank vault? Does it happen in a train room? Does it happen in somebody's home or an apartment? You have to decide where that is. Why? This is where the motive comes into play. Okay? If you're trying to solve a crime, there are 2 types of major crimes. You have premeditated These are crimes that are thought out from beginning to end. So what happens to Cassetti and Murder on the Orient Express, that is planned for years in advance, before anything ever takes place. And Poirot just happens to be in the right place at the wrong time. Okay? But then you have crimes of passion. Okay? Crimes of passion are the ones that happen in the spur of the moment. And those kinds of crimes happen because someone is angry or someone is scared. Those are usually the two driving emotions that are key to a crime of passion. Whether it is someone getting stabbed, whether it's someone getting killed. And sometimes something can happen in the spur of the moment. Where the crime that's supposed to happen goes haywire. So say, for example, you have a couple of guys who are robbing a bank, and in the process of robbing the bank, one of them gets a little jumpy and accidentally shoots the security guard. And the security guard is dead. Now, that crime of theft has become complicated by a homicide. It may not have been premeditated, but it's now part of the crime. The bank robbery was premeditated. The shooting of the cop or the security guard was not. All right? So that's your motive. Okay? And the motive needs to be solid. Okay? Think about the reasons why people commit crimes. People steal because they want more. People kidnap because maybe there's a reason behind it. Maybe they're trying to send a message to somebody. People kill either to send a message or out of revenge. So think about those motives. Okay? And then finally, how? This is your opportunity. Okay? How did it happen? What are the steps that led to this event taking place? All right? All of these things need to be included in the detail of the crime before you ever put pen to paper. Okay, number 3. Open with intrigue. Mystery readers enjoy jumping into the middle of the action, or in Latin, it's in media res. All right? Whether the story opens with the crime itself and then moves forward, or uses flashbacks to draw in readers while the sleuth unravels the threads of the clues. Okay? So one of the things, and I keep coming back to Murder on the Orient Express, but one of the things that is done well in that story is the fact that Poirot he keeps coming back to what he knows of the Armstrong case with the little girl going missing. This was a huge thing. It was all over the papers. And had he been involved, he probably would have helped solve the crime a lot faster, but it went unsolved. People knew who did it, but nothing could actually be pinned on Cassetti. And then he fled for Europe. He couldn't be gotten to by American law. Which is why the plan to kill him goes into effect, because they want justice served. But using those flashbacks to show you what happened and how the different characters are interconnected goes a long way to setting the stage and with intrigue involved. Another really good, it's more of a crime caper mystery, but the Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 13, those films are really pretty decent because your protagonists aren't sleuths. They're actually criminals. But what they're doing is they're stealing from another criminal. And so there is a similar structure where you get the setup, you get the intrigue of what they're trying to do. Are they going to get caught before they accomplish the theft that they're trying to accomplish? Or are they going to be successful? That's where the intrigue comes into play. You want to know what they're going to do, what gambit they're going to try to outsmart, outthink, and outdo whoever they're trying to rob. Tip number 4, construct convincing characters. Your best stories, the best stories in this genre, have solidly written characters, and the more human you can make them, the better. Just like with the crime and knowing every bit of the detail of what takes place, you need to know your characters inside and out. Okay? Your sleuth acts as the eyes and the ears of the reader and should be relatable. Okay? Now, characters like Sherlock Holmes, they're not relatable. Why? Because Sherlock Holmes is arrogant, he's cocky, he talks down at people. If you've ever watched a character like Dr. House from the show House, the way he talks to people, that's how Sherlock Holmes will sometimes talk with people, especially if he thinks he's smarter or better than you. But on the same thread, you have a character like Hercule Poirot, who's very intelligent, but he's a little bit more relatable because he keeps to himself, he's very polite, he talks kindly with people, and he has that charming French accent, even though he's Belgian. All right, so think about how your characters are, how they relate to one another, how you can relate them to your audience, to your readers. Tip number 5, make a list of suspects. So in the character development process, you want a list of suspects. A great mystery introduces several potential suspects, and each one should have reasons to be just as innocent as they are guilty. This is where we explore their MMO, their motives, means, and opportunity before committing them to paper. All right? So maybe a character has the motives and the means, but they don't have the opportunity. Or maybe they have the motive and the opportunity, but they don't have the means. Or maybe they have the means and the opportunity, but no motive. And that actually would make for a scary culprit, because what happens if there is no motive? Why do they do what they're doing? Are they just crazy? Do they just enjoy committing the crime? Is it an obsession? And maybe the fact that they have no motive makes them an outlier. So think about what drives them to commit the crime, or could drive them to commit the crime. Think about what resources they had at their disposal to commit the crime, and what is their opportunity to do so. Tip number 6, lean into your locations. Whether it's a small town like Hanford or a major metropolis like New York City, use the natural atmosphere and attributes of the place to enhance the intrigue and the action. The setting should feel like a character just as much as the people do. All right? Your locations play a huge role in how things play out. Again, going back to Murder on the Orient Express, they're on a train, okay? If you were to have this as a TV series, it's a bottle episode. A bottle episode is where the characters don't go anywhere. They don't move physically outside of, they may move temporarily outside of space, but they don't go across the city, or they don't go across to another county or to another country or to another state. They're stuck in this location. And that's essentially where they are. Murder on the Nile, which is another Agatha Christie story. Again, these characters are trapped on a boat sailing up and down the Nile River in Egypt. They can't go anywhere. There's no cops coming to help them until they pull back into port in Alexandria. They have no additional resources other than what is on the ship. They have to investigate everything there, and they can't go. They're stuck. It's, again, because it was a locked room mystery. Most of your mysteries are going to be a locked room. And those are fun to write because you have to figure out, how did the crime happen if no one else had access to the space? Tip number 7. Let the reader play along. The reason why mysteries are so popular is because readers want to be involved in figuring out the clues. A good mystery shows instead of tells. Create scenes allowing your readers to explore and discover clues, even those your main character might miss. Don't explain the connections. Let your readers ruminate on how clues connect. So that word ruminate is something I want you guys to focus on. Because the word ruminate comes from the word ruminant. Cows and goats and sheep are ruminants. where they will chew their grass or the alfalfa or whatever it is that they're eating. They chew it up, they get some of the nutrients out of it, it goes down in their stomach, gets processed, and then they cough it back up as cud. They chew that more, it goes back down to the next level of their stomach to get more nutrients out of it. And with cows especially, they have like 4 chambers to their stomachs before they finally pass it, whatever comes out left. And when you're having your characters, or when you're having your readers ruminate on how the clues are connecting, what they're doing is you give them an opportunity to go over those clues over and over again. Maybe have those clues pop back up, okay? Maybe have a secondary character talk to the sleuth about, well, what if we go back and we revisit this clue? What if we go back and investigate this other person? Maybe we have another interview with that suspect, okay? Bringing it back up gives another pass at thinking about the connections. And it allows the readers to be involved in the story. So that's tip number 7. Tip number 8. All right, misdirect your reader. Misdirect your reader. False clues and red herrings are necessary. But you shouldn't lie to your readers. Don't lie to them. Okay, you want to misdirect them. There's a big difference. They should present these clues, the red herrings, should present the possibility of doubt in what the readers believe is quote unquote certain in the mystery, in tandem with the sleuth. Okay, not only should the detective or the sleuth have some level of doubt, your reader should as well. That's the whole point of the red herring, is it throws everything out. One of my favorite mysteries is the movie Clue from 1985. Yes, the very same movie based on a board game. Okay? The reason why I love it so much is because it ends 3 different ways. Now for me, I believe that the final ending is actually the real ending. But here's the reason why I love it, is that there is a red herring referenced repeatedly in the film. At first it becomes subtle. By the end of it, it becomes a joke because it's a running gag. And they keep saying that communism was a red herring. So there's a lot of references. So the movie takes place in the 1950s, after World War II, late 40s, early 50s. And this idea of the Red Scare and communism is a big plot point. Several people in the cast of characters, whether it's Colonel Mustard or Mrs. Peacock or Miss Scarlet, regardless, all these characters have a connection back to Washington in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's diplomatic or they have something to do with the supply trains for military technology, whatever it is, they have all these connections. And the biggest fear at that time was whether or not someone was going to defect and be a double agent for the communists. So they make these references, they make these allusions, they make these inferences back to someone spilling the secrets that Washington has floating through the city to the communists. And then by the end of it, they're like, communism was just a red herring. Well, what was the nickname for the communists? They were called the Reds. So it's a double joke, both referencing the color and referencing the fact that it's a false clue. All right? You want to have those false clues because they make the story a little bit more fun, and you can have fun with it by making it a joke. Finally, tip number 9. Rewrite, then rewrite some more. You aren't going to nail it on the first draft. Go back through during rewrites to make sure that you haven't missed anything. What can help is working backwards from the ending to make sure that you don't miss anything. And what I mean by that is start with the revelation. Okay, if you already know the who, what, when, where, why, and how, start with the revelation. List all the actual clues in the reverse order of how they were discovered and how they tied back. But then from there, you want to draw lines and how those clues might also connect with other factors like like possible suspects, possible murder weapons, possible motives, possible means, possible opportunities. If you know the W's and the how and the MMO, the motive, means, and opportunity, you can play around with those clues. And if you start scaling them backwards, creating that chain of sequence, you can then branch everything out so that when the story takes place, you can have those clues ready to go. And when you read it from beginning to end, story makes sense. The revelation and the conclusion resolve in a way that makes sense for your reader and is satisfying. So, here is what your writing prompt is going to be. Okay, normally I have you guys write some kind of story idea. This is going to be a little bit more streamlined. You're going to read the following prompt in the mystery genre and generate the who, what, when, where, why, and how of the murder mystery. Bonus points if you decide what their MMO is. Okay, so this is the prompt. A young police officer is investigating the murder of his best friend from high school. Clues point in the direction of a fellow police officer. You have 20 minutes. And for those of you joining us online, thank you. I'm going to end the live stream. So, yeah.